that we have for International Women's Day. It's a very special and incredible lineup of Hong Kong women that we have here with us today to talk about their experiences being targeted by the Hong Kong police and the Hong Kong government, their experiences dealing with the bounty on their heads, the consequences that come with that, and to also talk about the activism and the differences, they face between being women who are, fighting for democracy and freedoms and rights back in Hong Kong. So we have with us today 5 incredible women who I think need little introduction, but I will briefly introduce all of them. Joey Siu from the World Liberty Congress. We have Chloe Cheung and Francis Hui from CFHK Foundation. And then we also have Anna Kwok and Carmen with us from HKDC. These women, span different continents of the world now, all of whom have had to move away from Hong Kong because of their activism and have, suffered quite a lot of consequences from it, but have continued pursuing, their values and their aims for Hong Kong. So obviously, there's one thing that all of these women share beyond just being, from Hong Kong and being activists who have pursued, these issues. They all have been targeted with a bounty of 100,000 Hong Kong dollars on their head if they were to return to Hong Kong or for information that would lead to their return to Hong Kong. This was one of the very sort of shocking ways the Hong Kong police and the Hong Kong government have pursued transnational repression and sort of maintained a sort of chokehold on activists even once they've left Hong Kong and once they've, gone into exile. So I think it's very, I think everybody really wants to hear about the experiences with that and how it's been like facing that and that sort of bounty, that sort of risk for the past few years. So Anna, of course, you were among the first to be targeted in this way back when I think it was still really unpredictable that the Hong Kong police, the Hong Kong government would use this tactic against people who were essentially in exile already, right? Maybe you can talk a little bit about, what it was like that sort of, I guess the initial shock or the initial surprise of being targeted in that way and sort of how that sort of shaped and defined, your life since, right? And the years that have followed.
Thank you, Shibani. I think before I start, I just want to highlight how wonderful it is that we're having this panel, even though the thing that drove us together on the same panel is that we all suffered from transnational repression through the form of a bounty. But of course, when the bounty first hit, I think it was really unthinkable and really ridiculous because at the time, the Hong Kong government hasn't really started targeting overseas activists in the form of a bounty. Of course, we have heard of arrest warrants before. The bounty is just another level as it mobilizes Hong Kongers around the world to look for us, to hunt for us, and to share information about us, such that the Hong Kong community would be split and that we'll have trust issues with each other. But when I first got the bounty, I think initially, one of the first thoughts I had was that it was clearly an attempt to make us feel fear. And I do think the Hong Kong government has shifted into, using more psychological warfare against Hong Kongers and against anyone who advocates for democracy and human rights. So when I realized that and when I acknowledged that was their goal, my first instinct was to not be fearful and to stand up and to make it a strong message that will not back down. So that's what I did, and that's what every lady here did actually in every single round of bounty. We stood together, we stood firm, and we affirmed that we would continue to fight. And what's more is that after we affirmed that we would fight harder, we actually did fight harder. Each of us utilized the news of the bounty, the news of the arrest warrant to go on to continue with our individual advocacy. So at the time during my bounty, I was trying really hard to bar John Lee here on American soil as he was attempting to come here as a sanctioned Hong Kong official to attend the APEC summit on behalf of the Hong Kong government. And at the time, the US State Department was not able to give any confirmation or answer on whether Johnny would be permitted. So of course, Shibani, you're smiling because you knew all the ordeals. In the end, he was successfully barred, but I believe it was through all these advocacy we did together. So in short, the bounty might be a danger and a threat to all of us, but at the same time, I think we all recognize that they're also an opportunity. In Chinese, when we talk about dangers, we call it nai gei, which the first character means danger. The second character actually means opportunities. So that's exactly what we all did. We turned each danger into an opportunity to advance the Hong Kong movement.
I realized, by the way, that I also forgot to introduce myself. I'm Shibani Mahtani. I'm a correspondent with the Washington Post. I was based in Hong Kong, covered the 2019 protests, and thereafter continued covering the events there as well. But yeah, thank you, Anna, for the really thoughtful response. Maybe we can turn to Joey first, and then Francis to talk a little bit more about their experiences as well, and how it was like being targeted by the next wave of bounties and those announcements, and what that's meant for their lives as well.
Sure. I just want to start by saying thank you to, CFHA for organizing this and constructing this space for, us women activists to come together and talk about the challenges and obviously the future of our Hong Kong diaspora advocacy work. And obviously, thank you to all the ladies here who have, been taking so much time investing in our movement. I think, obviously when Anna's bounty came, it was sort of a consensus among the community that this is not going to be the only round of bounties that the Hong Kong government is going to issue. It was pretty apparent that they're going to continuously exercise similar tactics as such to silence, dissent overseas. And I think that was largely because of how effective all of our advocacy works has been. We have successfully, advocated for sanctions from different governments against Hong Kong and Chinese officials. We have successfully, as Anna said, barred John Lee from entering American soil. We have successfully, advocated for so many things that the Chinese and the Hong Kong authorities are so fearful of. So so I think from my perspective, at least, I don't think it was an unexpected thing that the bounties are going to happen, especially against, us activists who have been, doing this work for the past few years so consistently in democracies across the world. But, obviously, after the first round of bounties, I've been trying to prepare myself mentally to welcome this news eventually in a few months or eventually in a year or so. But I do also want to acknowledge that overwhelming emotion that came along with the bounty was also very, very real. But also, as Anna have also pointed out, what comes with that at the same time was also the political momentum that the Chinese and Hong Kong authorities are giving us, who are being placed on this international arrest warrant, which allowed us to carry on the advocacy work and push forward the agendas that we have been, pushing forward at the moment. And I think, especially for myself as a U.S. citizen, being put on this wanted list and issued a 1 million Hong Kong dollar bounty, I think that made our cases of how dangerous this national security law and the subsequent Article 23 is going to be for not just Hong Kongers overseas or Hong Kongers on the ground, but really for also Americans across the world and the international community as a whole. I think that really strengthened our case as in why it is so important for the international community to speak out for not just Hong Kong, but also for themselves.
Francis, you want to add to that?
Yeah, for me, I think it's pretty similar to what Joey was talking about. I had expectation that it will come and I will be subjected to a similar degree of attack, but I think with all those mental preparation, you can't really know when it's going to come, and when it comes, it still kind of shocks you. And for me, I took part in multiple projects that I think kind of trigger the Hong Kong government. And I remember people have there are people who have warned me, and I remember Anna also warned me when I was leading a project about sanctions on Hong Kong officials and members of the judiciary. I remember Anna also warned me that I might be targeted if I put my name behind that. But I went ahead because I thought it was the right thing to do. And I know the CCP has been using tactics exactly like this to intimidate critics and silence dissent. And I really don't want to fall for that and perpetuate that kind of pattern. So I think with the first wave of bounty that was applied to Anna and other people, we were able to kind of ballpark what would happen if they're going to issue another round of bounty. So, for example, bank account would be frozen, homes in Hong Kong would be visited and searched, and family members would be brought in for police questioning and so forth. So, with all those kind of things that present, we were able to kind of make some preparation mentally. But it's still when it comes, I think it's surreal to see our faces on the screen. It can really, you can't really I can't really describe that feeling. Just seeing my face on the screen and hearing my name being called out by Lei Guaiwa, who, by the way, it's sanctioned by the US in 2020, and just hear from them listing out the things that we've done and the allegations. And like Anna and Joey have said, it felt like a crisis have came, and the mental stress just follow. You have to deal with a lot of things, and I think it's definitely a lonely journey because not many people had experienced that, and I'm sure it's even more difficult for Anna when she was one of the first several people who were bountied. But I think there was like a grace in disguise that we have always been in a group in our own community, that they have done this in batches. There were 3 rounds of bounty, right? And I got the bounty at the same time with Joey. And before that, it was Anna and others. So somehow it kind of feels like, it feels better to know that you're not the only one dealing with it. And you can always check in with each other. And I think, it's sad to say this, but also in the bright side, it really brought us together and continue to do the work that we have been doing.
Mm-hmm. So Carmen and Chloe were both among the most recent batch of people to be targeted, right? I mean, I think, there was a sense of definitely shock, right, when Anna and the others were among the first. I guess I'm curious whether there was a certain degree of, I don't know if this is the right word, but was the community a little bit more desensitized, Carmen and Chloe, by the time it was like the 3rd round of this? And, the other thing is, of course, the world has changed pretty dramatically in the sense that there's so much kind of competing news out there. There's a lot of competing demands on people in DC and people in London. If you want to talk about issues, global issues that people care about, there's obviously the Middle East, there's Ukraine. So yeah, I'm curious to hear, maybe Carmen first, and then Chloe. What did you feel the response was when this was happening again for the 3rd time? I mean, did you feel like there was a slightly less, kind of focus or urgency on it, or have you still been able to kind of continue to harness that momentum, right, and translate that into further action for the Hong Kong movement?
So thank you, Shibani, and it's very happy to see each of you again. The 3rd round of bounty, the timing of the Hong Kong National Security Police announcing it is a little bit weird to me. Apparently it's a Christmas Eve in Hong Kong and middle of the night in elsewhere, and I do think that the police intentionally put that on the date, that everyone is expecting kind of like a holiday mood. So therefore, at first, I actually thought that the momentum actually lost a little bit, and people may not be very interested in the 3rd round of the bounties. But after the holiday and the New Year, we actually still see a lot of people are actually concerning and amplifying our concerns for us. So I think that the momentum is still there, and as Anna said in the beginning, that we've been trying our best to use our case and our struggles to, to try to put the international spotlights on Hong Kong again. So I'm still optimistic on that, actually.
Hi, yeah, thank you for Shibani for hosting the panel today again. And I actually have a similar feeling with Carmen, because I remember that like I heard this announcement during Christmas Eve in Hong Kong and in the UK, and it's actually quite shocking because I was about to go on a holiday. I was with my family at that time, and I feel like the Hong Kong authorities intentionally want us to not have a good Christmas and they intentionally not want us to have a good Christmas, I think. So what I did is actually, although I have lots of fear at the beginning because I wasn't expecting that to happen to me, let me talk a little bit more about my story, because I am 19 years old at that time. I was in my gap year, and I'm just doing more advocacy in between my gap year because I want to speak up for Hong Kongers who can't speak up for themselves in Hong Kong. And it was kind of just what I want to do during my gap year before going to university. So I wasn't expecting the Hong Kong authorities to target me at this round of bounty. Of course, I've heard stories about Anna, about Joey, and I'm working with Francis in the CFHK. And of course, I knew there might be some risk on my, on me as well, but I don't expect that would happen that quick. So I was really, really shocked at that moment. But my only mindset is that I think because the authorities doesn't want me to have a good time on my Christmas, so I need to enjoy my Christmas more than before. So that's what I did for my Christmas. And I'm really glad that I spoke to Anna, Francis, Carmen, Joey, to talk about my concerns. I'm really glad that there are all these girls supporting each other. We have a strong bond in between each other. I think that's one of the things that the authorities can't break us, because we have a great relationship. We have a great bond in between us, and we are supporting each other all the time. And regarding the attention from Hong Kongers from international, I think that there are still lots of attention in the UK at least. Local media are interested in our story. Hong Kongers are really, really focusing on our issues as well. And I think that although lots of things are happening in the world, we saw what happened in Ukraine. I think there are lots of commonality between us, Hong Kongers, and Ukrainian. We are all facing dictatorship. We are all fighting so hard against dictators, etc. So I think although there are lots of things happening in the world, we are still connecting different people around the world fighting against dictatorship.
And just a reminder to our audience that they can leave questions in the chat at any time. We'll leave some time at the end of the panel for Q&A. Before we start talking more broadly about being a woman in this sort of activist movement, I do want to ask, and anyone can sort of feel free to kind of jump in here, but really, what has the bounties kind of meant for the relationship between you and sort of your families and friends back in Hong Kong? I know that's obviously the goal, right, of the Hong Kong police in kind of imposing these kind of bounties and sort of pursuing these forms of transnational repression, right? I mean, the idea is to kind of really sort of break that connection between overseas activists and their communities back in Hong Kong, right? And that's the tactic that they're using. I'd be curious to hear from really any of you to just share a little bit about what that relationship has been like, and how it's been getting through that and coping with that.
I guess I can jump in. So you're definitely right that it's the goal of the regime to break people up. And after the bounty, I think we can all feel the entire community or just our personal social network has also becomes, scattered into different layers. So there's a layer of people who would be still very willing to interact with us and communicate with us as if nothing has happened. And then there would be people who are kind of on the fence, who sometimes are communicative, sometimes they're worried if there are news popping up, and maybe a year later they would surface, miraculously. But then there are also some people who would just not communicate or contact us anymore, or that they would always do it, privately through, a third person or a private secure channel. And I think that has been actually a tactic the Chinese Communist Party has been employing for Chinese, Uyghurs, Tibetan activists for decades already. So I think for us, we actually can learn a lot of lessons from the other movements. And learning lessons is not just about, learning, oh, how do I cope with it? Or, what are the skills I can do to make myself or make people around me more safe? But it's more about acquiring a mental capacity or acquiring kind of a mental skill set for us to learn, okay, how do I deal with this sort of stress? How do I understand it's not my fault, but that it is the system's fault, or that the regime's issue, that we are both put into this unfortunate positions. So I think for people like us, or, other people who have had a bounty as well, it really is about acquiring mental capacity more than anything. And that is why knowing that we're all in this together is very important. And remembering that there are still a lot of people who are willing to support us, who are willing to, walk with us every step of the way. It's a very empowering knowledge that cannot be replaced by anything else.
Yeah, I think the idea is to isolate all of us, right? Like they first put the bounty on us, and then friends and people around us or associated with us would have to kind of second question themselves, whether I want to continue to have connections with this person, to risk to be targeted in the future. And then also, not just with the bounty, they have issued other stuff. They have announced other things. Other actions on 19 of us. People bank accounts or properties were frozen, were revoked, and some of their license were revoked and things like that. And they just continuously, constantly reminding us that they're chasing us, and remind you that the chief executive of Hong Kong, have John Lee. He has said very explicitly that they would chase us down, everywhere around the world like street rats, and that's the extent of how they will continue to reach out to us and continue to intimidate us. So I think that's the tactic. And then what I also want to highlight is that it's not only just to isolate us from outside resources or any kind of support. It's also like what they're trying to do is also to break the relationship with ourselves, like how we're dealing with our emotion and how we're handling all these mental stress and navigate through all of that emotions, and to really think about what we are going to do and to instill that fear in order to break us. And I'm just really glad that we're, like what Anna said, all of these 5 women were standing strong. Even when the bounty came, we didn't back down. And it's not an easy thing to do. And I have so much respect for everyone here. And I cannot stress enough of, the support that, the support that we get from other people and from within this community. It's so important to keep us, wake up every day, keep us alive every day, because when you get isolated, these things become so much more important and valuable.
Just that very quickly that I think obviously when the bounty first came, our individual emotions were very, very overwhelming, having to deal with the fear, with the concerns for our families and friends back home, for concerns about our movement overall, how do we move forward? How do we, actually utilize the political momentum that the announcements are giving us? I think obviously those are the emotions that we had to, prioritize addressing at the time. But I also think through the bounties that were issued on, the five of us, and then the others who were also put in the same situation, I think it also allowed us the very rare opportunity of actually reflecting on how we as a diaspora community collectively, confront this fear, confront this terror that the Chinese Communist Party is trying to instill in us. I think with the bounty and then subsequently with the cancellation of our passports, and with the Hong Kong government essentially saying that by association with the five of us and then the others, you are going to be, a target under the national security law in Article 23(2). Obviously, some community members have that very legitimate fear and have to take a step back. But that also allowed, some people to, reflect on ways to more creatively resist this kind of fear together with us who are with the bounty, and then obviously to reflect on how they themselves can also, move forward, knowing that this fear is going to exist, for a very long time, and that this oppression is going to continue.
Yeah, those are all really great comments. Carmen, do you want to jump in?
I just saw the chat that someone asked about the Chinese embassy, and I think I could share some of the things, and it's also related to the question you've asked. So we had a protest with 4,000 turnout last month against the new Chinese super embassy plan in the UK, and so along with a lot of organizations, including the CFHA and also HADC. So I helped co-organize the thing and also spoke at the protest. And then just 2 days after, my family were actually got interrogated in Hong Kong, and they are actually my distant relative, which is who are not my parents or siblings, but it happens right after, and it seems to be a retaliation of us organizing the protest against the Chinese super embassy. And I think these incidents actually link up to a lot of my emotions of having to be separated from my families, going into exile, and continue my work like all the other ladies here. And but sometimes I think people may think that emotions are weak, but I think to us that especially for women and women activists, we are more resilient whenever there are emotions going through. So the sadness, or the struggles or the frustrations are always there, and we are expecting more retaliation and different sort of tactics of transnational repression that the Hong Kong governments would do. But I don't think I just want to reiterate that emotions or these sort of personal feelings don't actually disrupt our work, or even make us more resilient in continuing our work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the main questions I also wanted to ask of all the panelists, actually. I mean, one of the things that set all of you apart in a movement that's very, very male dominated, actually, is the fact that all of you are young women, right? And young women who have spent actually most of your adult lives since your teenage years fighting for Hong Kong and fighting in this movement. And I think for so long, right, there were all these stereotypes about what it means to be a woman from Hong Kong, a girl from Hong Kong. And I would love Chloe to kind of jump in and talk a little bit about what it means to be a young woman who is, at the forefront of a movement like this, right? And what kind of additional sort of burden or challenges that come with that?
I think I would echo some of what Carmen has said, because it's really emotional to get a bounty, especially it's Lunar New Year a month ago, and Lunar New Year was supposed to be a festival that people get together with their family and friends to celebrate the time. And I find it quite emotional that, because after I've left Hong Kong, I have been in touch with my friends in Hong Kong. But then this year, after I got my bounty, I've received lots of text messages from my friends saying that, oh, I'm so sorry, Chloe, I can't get in touch with you anymore. I can't message you. I can't text you. I can't meet you anymore, because they have to go back to Hong Kong regularly, or their family are still in Hong Kong. So they can't risk themselves for talking to me. And I find it quite weird during Lunar New Year that I can't really text my friend and say Happy Lunar New Year. I can't do all these stuff because I have to protect them, and I kind of have to isolate myself and distance myself from them because of what happened to me. I have to protect them because they can't be seen as talking to a person with an arrest warrant and a bounty. And if they know my information, they have the responsibility to report to the Hong Kong authorities, or else they could be charged under like Article 23 for not reporting someone who got an arrest warrant. So I find it quite hard and quite emotional on that. But I feel like that emotion actually pushed me to do more stuff in advocacy in fighting for Hong Kong, because it is not easy. And I would really love to do more to free Hong Kong, because unless I free Hong Kong, I could never speak to them anymore in the rest of my life in the future. So I think that actually brings me a lot of strength, being kind of emotional. And I, besides my friends texting me, I also got some like threatening message from people, sexual harass message from lots of people on Twitter, from Instagram, etc. I think, like as Joey said, we are having lots of overwhelming messages and information that we have to take every day. But then as women, we stand really strong with each other, and we will fight against whatever happened to us.
On the topic of sexual harassment and things that women have to deal with that men often do not, that has really been a tech that we've seen repeatedly, right, from the CCP through the use of trolls, online bots, sort of spam accounts, and so on, that really appear to be set up specifically to really target especially female activists overseas. Anna, I know you've had quite a lot of firsthand experience with this, and Joey as well. Maybe that's something that the two of you might feel sort of comfortable sharing. Maybe Anna first.
For sure. So you're right that unfortunately we do get a number of overwhelming messages every day. We wake up, we turn on our phone, and maybe the thing we see is that we have death threats, we have threats to follow us, stalk us, and then we also have threats to rape us. And I would say that is now the daily life of all of us, unfortunately. And we're not really seeing social media platforms doing enough to help or to ensure that these messages don't continue. Actually, Carmen was just showing me yesterday, I think, about some comments threatening to rape her the other day on her social media platforms publicly. And that's just a daily occurrence for us. And that speaks to how absurd and how difficult it is to be a women activist in this space. Because from my conversations with other men activists, it doesn't really seem like that's something they would have to deal with. And at the same time, I also think, other than this sort of raping threats, we're also constantly receiving a lot of messages that aim to undermine us. just because we're women. So there would be a lot of rhetoric and narratives from the Hong Kong government or from propaganda outlets saying things like, oh, you're just like a young girl, or you're just like a 小女人, a little woman. What can you do? And you're so useless and you're helpless and you won't amount to anything. So I think this sort of constant stream of comments targeting our identity and our and us as women actually also reinforce some existing societal pressure we have just for being a woman. So I think that is what the regime aims to do. They're trying to identify the spots we are weakest in terms of our mentality, and then they will try to amplify those, disqualifying voices we have in our minds and try to make sure that we are the ones who beat ourselves up in our heads. So that's why I think for women activists, this sort of gender-based online harassment and gender-based criticism or gender-based narratives we see online, or actually in person physically as well, is pretty harrowing and also very intense coming from the regime.
I'll just add that, obviously everything that Anna has said, I think as women activists, obviously after the bounty we have, all of us here have been receiving very serious extents of, gender-based harassment, violence, threats, everything, threatening to rape us, undermining our work, saying that we've, achieved what we have done, in the US, in the UK, and elsewhere because we have, exchanged for that with ourselves. That occurs on a daily basis ever since I became an activist in 2019, and obviously was so much more worsened after the bounty came. I think this also, reminds us and allowed me to reflect on a few things in regards to this, gender-based approach that we have all been, confronting. I think first of all, it's so important that we recognize the intersectionality behind all the struggles that we are, going through in our communities. Obviously, for ourselves overseas, we experience this, massive, orchestrated gender-based harassment. And thinking back to what has been going on in Hong Kong, it is also so important that, we bear in mind of the unique sufferings of the women political prisoners are going through, on top of the standard, political oppression and, unjust situations in prison that they're facing as women activists. They are facing another layer of that kind of, oppression orchestrated by the government, by actors who are not friendly to, women and other marginalized actors in our movement. I think that's very important that we bear in mind of that and actively think about ways to, address that. And then the second reflection that I have is also how, by undermining our work, the Chinese authorities, from my opinions, is also reinforcing this stereotypical gender role in the society. I think, obviously I do think they are, threatened and terrified of, as activists advocating overseas that have been doing such impactful work. I think it is extremely terrifying and in particular, horrifying to them when they see that the activists that are doing these work are, young women in different countries with a bounty on their heads and still not, and still not, conceding space to them and still not giving up. I think they are fearful that this is going to encourage, more women voices from inside of China, from inside of Hong Kong to, disobey their governance and then to come out as, strong, independent women activists. So so I do think, obviously there are a lot of unique challenges that we face as women activists in the space, but I do think this is also going to require a collective communal approach in tackling this, which is going to include, not just us women activists, but also men and then people of other genders in the space as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very good point that really it kind of reflects the CCP's own sort of biases or framework, right? When they themselves think about women and the role of women in society too. So there are quite a few questions, including some that came in beforehand. So I think I'd like to take the opportunity to, just make this a little bit more interactive and address some questions from the audience and questions that come in beforehand. I'm going to combine a couple, but a number of people have asked essentially what other kind of sort of threats or harassment that you guys have faced, while living your lives in DC or London or wherever else, right? Perhaps being, trailed or followed in person, intimidated, in real life in that way, had your phones hacked, had any issues with your bank accounts. If any of you want to sort of jump in on the different kind of methods and sort of forms that this harassment has sort of taken.
Yeah, I think other than what Anna and Joey had described about, all these threats that are coming in, whether it's through social media or directly on other channel, there are also the real physical threats that would come. Like some people, they, there are trolls on the internet, and then there are bots on the internet, but there are also people who are in real life, either hired by the CCP or feel completely compelled to work for the CCP, voluntarily to do all these things. For myself, I have regularly received calls from people, Mandarin speaking man who are able to name myself with my name and say random things that it doesn't really make sense. Like I've received a call from a man, speaking Mandarin and asking, "Oh, are you single? Like I got your contacts from so and so," and they're able to name me, and I've been getting these calls regularly from different phone numbers, and obviously, it wouldn't make sense if they are coming from like different phone numbers, and obviously it's like a coordinated effort that they've get these numbers for one-time use and to do these harass us. There are also I had I think some of us on the board have experienced that as well. It's that being followed to our home or being followed when we're going in between work, and it's something that happened in real life, and the fear, it's real. And some of us, maybe it's easier for us to handle that in the US, I would say, compared to the UK. It seems like the situation is much worse, and the response from the authority or the assurance protection from the authority is very much lacking, I think, in the in the UK compared to what I've experienced. And I think that highlights the extent of transnational repression and this pressing need that we have to tackle and address this issue in a more social society-wide approach, including providing more protections and more communications with victims of transnational repression. We need to through policy work, we have to criminalize acts of transnational repression in our in the laws and in our national law. In order to track down these people, globally, there should be more collaborations, multilateral collaborations between within the intellectual community to share informations and intelligence to really to really trace the pattern of transnational repression, because we know that on their side they have been counting on the inability of countries working together to address this issue. And so we I think what is happening to us, to other activists, are real life example that this issue has never been so important and urgent that needs to be addressed.
Right. Just jumping off that really quickly, just before that, there were a couple of questions here too. Essentially what Francis said about government inaction, right? And what the governments can do. Carmen, actually, this is a perfect question, for you to address too. But there was a question from Ethan on how, the various ministers always keep repeating that everyone's deeply concerned about these bounties. They're deeply concerned about the pressure that the Hong Kong government's placing on overseas activists. But what more can actually, be done here, right? And what do you hope to kind of see?
So just sharing my personal experience, last week, my MP actually got in touch by his constituents, aka my neighborhood. They've been receiving a wanted notes of myself and encouraging them to bounty hunt on me and put me into the Chinese embassy. And I think it also echoes Francis' point that it's far beyond the harassment and intimidation is far beyond online and far beyond the internet. It's real life, physical. I think a lot of us here also experience being shadowed or being followed on the streets, and yeah, and this is something that we've been facing, and I'm very disappointing that the UK government hasn't been doing anything. You may also heard from different occasions that Chloe and I actually talked a lot about the reaction of the police and also the government after our bounties, that the counterterrorism police, they share with us a so-called blue book, a guidance for targeted person under the counterterrorism team. While it's nothing relating to transnational repression, and whenever things happen, the police suggest us whenever things happen, just call the 999, and it's very frustrating to me because I thought that so we are at our third round of bounty already, and there are 10 wanted individuals in the UK. Well, yet there hasn't been a protocol by the set by the UK police or the UK government in handling these cases, and the forms or the tactics of the harassment and intimidation is getting worse day by day, and even today in the parliaments, they are still just saying that they are very concerned about that, but on the other hand, they keep shaking hands with the Chinese regime, and there is a lot can be done, not to mention imposing sanction. I don't have hope with the UK governments that they will do that, but at least personal safety of targeted individuals, especially those who are on the bounty list, and of course to the broader community of Hong Kongers in the UK, is essential and is a must for the home office actually to work on it now, and to take decisive actions to just tackle transnational repression, which is an issue that a lot of people are talking about in the UK right now, not only the Hong Kong diaspora with 200,000 people in our community, and so sorry, speaking of which, I'm really very disappointed of what the UK government has been doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I could just jump to Chloe to add on that a little bit, because there was a question too about how you and your family might have been targeted too in the UK, and then I think Francis and Anna also want to jump in after that.
Yeah, so I think a month ago, after the bounty, I was being followed on the street after a Hong Kong community event randomly. So yeah, basically there were two Chinese men who looked really, really suspicious. They followed me to a restaurant from the Hong Kong community event at night, and I was with my friend, fortunately, and they walked around me. They tried to listen to our conversation really suspiciously. They are not buying any food in the restaurant. They are just walking around us. And after we sat down, they just like grabbed some food and sat down as well. And I don't want to dive into too much details about what happened, but basically I was being followed and I reported to the police. The police said they will do some investigation and never get back to me, as usual. And as Carmen said, I was also contacted by the UK police. They told me to call 999 if anything emergency happened. And they also gave me like a booklet about how to protect myself, basically. And it's just not enough support from the UK government and the UK police. And when and we got a meeting with Catherine West, the foreign minister, and David Lammy, the foreign secretary in the UK. And the day after we met them, David Lammy announced that he support the mega embassy plan, which is really, really, really disappointing for us who are in the UK, who got a bounty on our head. We are so disappointed by the act that the UK government is doing, because we knew that the mega embassy would be a surveillance hub for the Chinese Communist Party. It would be an expansion for their power in the UK soil, for targeting activists like us or diaspora or anyone, any Hong Konger who escaped from Hong Kong. And the UK government met us, knew about what happened to us, knew about there has been intimidation, there has been not enough protection for Hong Kongers in the UK, but then they still approved the plan for the mega embassy in London, which is, I think it's not acceptable as a Hong Konger who are in the UK.
Yeah, if I just wanted to kind of add on to what Carmen and Chloe have said, I think what really enabled these kind of actions, these kind of horrible acts by the CCP, it's the inaction from governments to hold them accountable. You see in what Chloe was just talking about, the mega embassy plan that came out after the bounty was issued. And then in the US, there wasn't really much thing done other than, what we were talking about, expressing concerns or condemning them. There were visa restrictions imposed on Hong Kong officials, but the US government have refused to review who are under that types of restrictions. Yet we saw that officials like Paul Chan or members of parliament, Regina Ip, coming to the US, like nothing really happened to them. And there has been no sanctions issued, imposed on any of these officials that are involved in transnational repression or involved in the repression, the persecution on activists in Hong Kong, for putting them into jail, for imprisoning them. And other than just talking about, when we talk about, providing more resources locally here to, provide trainings for law enforcement, to provide protections and support for the victims, there needs to be more needs to be done on the higher level. What's the stance that governments is taking? What's their actions when? What is their response? Immediate response when a bounty is issued, when passports are being revoked, when this is happening, not just to residents in Hong Kong, but also a U.S. citizen, Joey. These things, or a Canadian citizen included in the third round of bounty. It's just it's absurd that the governments feel zero urge to respond more more timely and more strongly to what is happening to all of us here, all of these women, and all of us who are freedom fighters, who are just speaking up and standing up against a dictatorship. Our community need these voices, and what they have been doing is to break it down. And if governments is not holding the CCP accountable for these acts, it's going to keep continuing. They're counting on this kind of inaction to continue to extend their arms to our community and to break us down, break this movement.
Yeah, I hope the audience can really sense the very strong and passionate sentiment we have collectively about the inaction thus far, because CFHA, together with HADC, Center of Hong Kong, a lot of different advocacy organizations have really been fighting for years just for the governments to act, not only the UK government, but also the US government and governments in other parts of the world where Hong Kongers reside in. So I just want to offer a little framework as a summary for this part of the question, is that when governments respond, we basically ask them to look out, we basically ask them to look at their actions in three ways. So there is the action they should be doing before any specific event of TNR happens. And there should be actions they do during an active event or active incident of TNR. And there are also things they should do after, certain things happen. So before, a specific incident has happened, they always have to prepare themselves. And how they have to prepare themselves is to by first create a mechanism that fully helps with communication and coordination across agencies and also across federal and state levels, such that when something happens, they're equipped to respond immediately. And secondly, it is always important to reach out to the community because there are actually a lot of intelligence and information within the Hong Kong community, but because there's no existing trust with the FBI agents or if certain investigation bureaus or even the police, people feel uneasy to reach out to the authorities to share information. And that actually allows a lot of these TNR cases or a lot of helpful evidence slip through the cracks. And thirdly, also very importantly, training is needed, specifically for first responders who often are on the scene of a TNR case. So if a case of TNR happened, which actually were documented extremely extensively in Shibani's piece previously, and also in a joint report between HADC and SFT on APEC Summit in San Francisco in 2023 November. So basically, a bunch of us were harassed, stalked, followed, intimidated, and some people were even assaulted to the point of a concoction. But during that time, we saw that the first responders, specifically the local police, did not really know how to react to it. And even the government, also US government, did not really exactly know how to react to a case like this because it spans through diplomacy, national security, and also state legislation. So this is where this is why mechanism has to be prepared beforehand instead of just winging it as we go, because it never works like that. And after the case happened, and if fortunately the victim survived, then there are several things to do. First is government should definitely immediately investigate into the case, and the investigation should be made clear to the victim involved, and the investigation should also be done as quickly as possible. And secondly, they also have to revise the mechanism based on information they have learned through the event that just transpired. And last but not least, I'll be quick, but this is a very important point, is that the status of the people who are impacted should also be concerned. So this includes two different parties. One party is the people who conduct the TNR. So they're the people who assault Hong Kongers. And then the other group of people would be the Hong Kongers or Tibetans, Uyghurs, Chinese who got beaten up. When people become a victim of TNR, sometimes they feel unsafe to speak up because perhaps they don't have any secure immigration status here in the US. Maybe they're still waiting for their asylum, and they have no idea if a case like this would actually limit their chance of staying in the US, even though it's very legitimately a form of political repression that they have faced and they are facing. So these are just some really important points that policymakers and government officials have to be mindful of, is that it really requires cross-agency collaboration as well as communication with the community to make things work and to ensure that transnational repression does not happen again or does not happen as intensely on American soil or on British soil.
Thank you so much, Anna. Yeah, I think it's very useful to think about things in that sort of more macro sense as well, in discussing all these themes and discussing what can be done. This panel is really a testament to the fact that if what the Hong Kong government or the Chinese government were intending to do was to break the bonds between the overseas activist community, it's really instead brought you all much closer together and actually brought you all closer together in a way that allows everybody to learn from each other's experience and sort of grow from what each other has experienced as well. On that note, I think it would be really, really good for all of you to kind of leave our audience or leave any of the maybe young women who might be watching or who might be considering whether activism or this path is for them, to leave them with sort of a message of kind of kind of solidarity or to inspire them on a day like International Women's Day, and what you would say to maybe even a younger version of yourself who is just getting started on this journey in activism.
Yeah, I guess I can go first, since I actually prepare a message for people who are watching, just young girls or women who are watching. I think as women activists, as you've heard from all of us, we faced a lot of different unique challenges, even outside of having to combat the CCP and all the pressure that they're putting on. And I think for the better lack of better words, we're also combating the patriarchy and gender-based violence and many other things that male leaders or activists might not have would experience. And sometimes people would convince you that you don't belong, you're not behaving well, or your voice doesn't matter, you don't belong to here. And I think exactly for that reason, it's important that we find ways to get our voice out, no matter what the issue is and what the what you care about. I think every actions counts. And I'm a strong believer in representations. There have been many brilliant female leaders in our movement, including during the umbrella movement, whether they're standing at the forefront as a leader or working behind the scenes. They embody great values and strength, including some of them who are now held behind bars for doing exactly the thing that that gives us strength. And I think even right now today, with all 5 of us here who are subject to CCP repression, just gathering here, I believe this would also have impacts on other girls and women who are watching in ways that we won't be able to imagine. And it obviously takes time for the impacts to appear. But I think never underestimate your impact. It might not feel like we're doing anything substantial, but if we look back to this date today, a decade later, I'm sure we will be able to see it more clearly, what we the impacts that we're making and the influence that we're making. So with that said, I think when you take the courage to step up, it would always give others the strength to join courses, and as a result, it expand our movement and continue prolong this cause until the day that we reach our goal. For us is I guess for at least for me, is to be able to go back home and see all of my friends and to see prisoners being freed, and we will be able to live in a free Hong Kong. And for some other people it might be different things, but we need to continue to take the courage and to step up and to use that as a strength to lend our strength for others to join our movement. And that's how we can continue. We need to empower each other to continuing to hold this space for one another and supporting each other. So I just wanted to wrap by saying I'm really thankful for for this opportunity that we can all gather and to share our insights and share our experience, and at the same time to offer some kind of advice or to share with other girls who are watching that might also be the future activists in our movement. And I think we have a long way to go, and we can only do that by supporting each other.
I'll just very quickly also add that I think, I feel like, with the 5 of us, still standing tall against Chinese Communist Party, and then just by the fact of seeing that the Chinese Communist Party actually feels so, certain enough that they have to put a bounty on us and issue an international arrest warrant for the five of us. I think that really showed how powerful each of our individual efforts for in a fight in for democracy, human rights, and freedom could be. And I really hope that this inspires, young women activists in our space to take a step forward to, become a more vocal part of the movement. And obviously, we all understand that with the gender-based, perspective into the harassment that women activists would need to face being part of this movement. I think all five of us here would just want to be this example that demonstrates that it is possible. It is going to be very difficult, but still it is going to be possible. And obviously, we will also want to offer ourselves as a resource for any, young girls or women that are, thinking about taking a step forward, not just in the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement space, but in their own spaces, wanting to step up and then to fight this patriarchy and then to break the glass ceiling. We want to be a resource. We want to be an ally. If any one of you is watching this and wanted to understand, how you can prepare yourselves or just wanted to, talk this out, we're here for you. We're here for that. And I think it's also very important that we know that this is not you don't have to contribute to this movement by becoming an activist, just by, working in your own space, working in your own industry, perfecting the things that you do and then breaking that glass ceiling. I think that is a revolution of your own. And ultimately that contributes to our overall revolution for the, freedoms and democracy in Hong Kong. So I really hope that today's panel, brings inspiration and hope and encouragement to those of those in the audience who are watching, for young women and girls to be inspired, for men and other allies in the space to be in a better position of understanding what we have been going through, and collectively being able to be part of that effort into addressing these issues that we're facing collectively.
Chloe, Carmen, Anna, you want to add as well?
I would say from the beginning of being an activist, we knew that there will be consequences that might be quite heavy to like in response to what we have done for fighting for democracy. But then I think one of the main reasons that I have been thinking to quit or to give up for like hundreds, thousands times. But the reason that I am still doing that, I'm still fighting for the freedom in Hong Kong, is because I think I really love what I'm doing. And I would say, I think when I have the opportunity here outside of Hong Kong, I feel like I have the responsibility to do that as well. I should use the opportunity that I get to do whatever I can. It's not an easy path to take, I would say, but there will be lots of people supporting you along the way if you're doing the right thing. So I think, although it seems like it seems very scary to walk on this path, but actually I think it's worth trying. You never know what would happen to you. It's exciting, it's terrifying, but it's enjoyable, to be honest. So I think, just we hope to see all of you in the future in the advocacy field, in human rights world, etc.
Let me also jump in and share. As others were sharing their thoughts, I was reminded that actually when I was an anonymous activist not so long ago in 2019, people on the internet usually assumed I was a man for some reason after I organized an international campaign. So when I revealed that it was actually Anna Kwok, I'm Anna Kwok, and that I'm a woman, I think a lot of people were kind of shocked and surprised. And I think that was partly due to the underrepresentation of women in the advocacy and activism space in Hong Kong. But when I joined the activism circle, I started realizing women have always been here. It's just that they were not seen, they were not heard, they were not amplified, and they were not empowered to have their own platforms. So I hope that with the 5 of us being here and with all the work we have tried doing in the past few years with a strong message that women are strong, I really hope that the next time, if there was an anonymous activist, people would at least feel, oh, it's uncertain what the person's gender is, or even think, oh, that must be, a lady. So that's something I really wish could happen. And I also think for us, of course, we're trying to set an example of how women can participate and lead in our movement. And at the same time, I also think it's important for us to build the community we wish to see. So sometimes it's easy to say, oh, the community, it's such and such, which is very difficult for people to operate in or to work in. But at the same time, we have to remember we all play a part in building the kind of community we are in. So that is why I also want to ensure that we're all empowered to do that, and we're all feeling we have that choice in our hand, that together with each decision we're making, with each statement we're saying, or with each move we're making a community that is trying to be friendlier to women. And in fact, after my leadership at HADC, we've also expanded it into a women-led team, just because that's the kind of environment I want to be in. So yeah, here's just a story of how things have changed over the years. And I really hope that can encourage more women and more youngers to feel politics is not something too masculine or something, too complicated or something they would not have a space in. There's a space for everyone. Literally, there's a space for everyone because there's a lot of work we have to do. So just take that space and start, building the community you want to see.
For me, I think it's more of a generational revolution, I may say. I think I remember that in the past, when I was still in Hong Kong, being an assistant for politicians, he once said, we stand up and fight. It's because we don't want our next generation to be the one to fight. And I think I still keep that deeply in my mind until now, that we are always striving for a better future and better society for our next generations, so that they do not have to suffer in the same struggle as us. And when I don't know, when I keep that spirit in my mind, there's always a ideal society that I always imagined, that people are all the people are equal, and we don't have to face what we are facing at the moment. And yeah, and so I think just of our existence here is actually a resistance to the regime, and also is you know I hope that's only with our existence here we could inspire someone. May not be, better to be a woman, but also anyone that's from any of the communities, or from different ethnicities, that's they would also join our cause for striving for a better world. And I think the vision is a little bit broad, but I think people advocating for any of the causes, or any of the struggles, actually we are sharing the same goal, to strive for a better world.
That's like the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much to all of the panelists. It's really, really wonderful and refreshing to have a panel full of women, young women, and incredible young women representing their movement and, speaking on behalf of Hong Kong and of, the broader sort of CCP resistance. Thank you so much to our audience for tuning in and for all your questions. And I guess good morning, good afternoon, or good night to you, depending on what time zone you're in. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you. Thanks all.